All right, hello. Welcome, and today we are going to be looking at a few things with the program that we're going to be using for this class, Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to be looking at how to open up the program, open a new document, how to use some of the basic tools, and maybe a few other things, but that's really pretty much it. We just want to set a nice solid foundation before we get into the real complicated techniques and tools that the program has to offer. So the first thing you need to do when you open up your computer is we need to actually open up the program. And the program, it can be accessed a few different ways on our computer, but the fastest way, I feel, is to go down here to the bottom left, our search bar here, and it says type here to search, and I suggest just typing in Illustrator. And then here it should pop up. And a quick tip to have Illustrator be accessible really quickly, you can click Pin to Taskbar here, and then it will stick down here. So then whenever you open up your computer, Illustrator will be right there, and you can just click it that way, and it will open up. It does take a few seconds to open up, so you kind of have to be patient. And there it goes. This is the home screen to the Adobe Illustrator app. And to start a new project, to open a new file, you're gonna, well, you probably guessed it, go to this blue button up here that reads new file and click on that guy. All right, and that's gonna open up this new window. And this gives us a couple of different options here. It gives us some preset sizes for our project. You can see down here at the bottom, most of them read with the size in inches that the final project is going to be. You can decide what that unit of measurement is over here in this little drop down menu. We can do inches, right? We can do feet. We can do pixels. We can really choose centimeters. We can choose almost any unit of measurement that we want. 8.5 by 11 inches is the size of a standard piece of printer paper. So I'm just going to stick with that. And then I'm going to hit create. All right, and now we are greeted with our project. So this white area is the working space. We can make things outside of the working space in this gray area, but say we are to save this as an image when we were done, this white area is the part of the project that would be saved as an image. So this is kind of the bounds of our project, even though we can make things outside of it. So first things first, we need to know how to navigate this project here. So the way I am moving around right now, up and down and side to side, I'm using 2 fingers on my trackpad to kind of move around the document, but I can't kind of pinch and pull with my 2 fingers on the trackpad. Unfortunately, to zoom in and out, we need to use a specific tool to do that. And that tool, it's going to look like a little magnifying glass. It's right here on the bottom of your toolbar on the left. Your toolbar will probably look like this with 2 columns, and no matter the setup, your zoom tool should be at the bottom. So I'm going to click that, and now I can click with 1 finger on the trackpad and pull from side to side, and this is going to allow me to zoom into different parts of my canvas, which is really helpful. All right. And one more thing to say about the zoom tool. Let's say we're on another tool. Let's say we're using the pen tool or this little selector tool or whatever. We're on some other tool. If we want to get to that zoom tool really fast, and I don't want to move my mouse all the way over here to the toolbar, you can see that right next to the name of the tool, there is a letter, and that letter is the hotkey. So if I just press that letter on my keyboard, Z, then that zoom tool will come up really fast and really easily, which is very helpful. So let's say we're working on something and I want to just zoom in on this area really fast. I can hit Z, click and drag, and then go back to whatever tool I was using. So that's a helpful shortcut. All right, so when we're creating images and designs in this program in Illustrator, there are two categories that we need to discuss. And those two categories are a path versus an object. All right, so let's start with path. So a path contains one or more straight or curved line segments that you draw using the pen or the pencil or some other tool over here on this sidebar. And it can be made thicker or thinner. So it's basically just a line connected by two or more points, right? So let's look at our first tool that we can use to make paths. So the first tool we're going to look at is the pen tool. That is this tool right here. Its hotkey is P. So if we click the letter P on our keyboard, boom, we go right to the pen tool. And the way that this works is it lets you draw paths as if you were going point by point. So it allows you to create straight or curved paths with different points. And in Illustrator, we call those points at the end of the path anchor points. So I'm just going to click here, and you can see that no matter where I move on my canvas with my mouse, it's going to be followed with a line segment. So I can just keep clicking, click, 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 and it's going to connect those points, those anchor points, with line segments, which is super helpful. And then if I hit the Enter key, that line is done. So now we have a line. We can move that line around. Very helpful. So let's try that again. Click, 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 and it's going to connect all of these points with lines. Now let's say we want to use the pen tool to make a curved line. What I'm going to do is click again. So let's try that here. But I'm not going to lift up my finger. So I've pushed down on the trackpad on my computer, but I haven't let go yet. So I'm still holding down. And I'm going to drag my mouse around on the trackpad. And you can see as I drag my mouse, when I'm still holding down that click, it is creating a curve. Cool. And so now what we need to talk about are these two little handles that are coming off from the anchor points now. So once you create a curve, you're going to get these two little lines that are coming off with circular points at the end, and these are called handles. What these are kind of guides to where the curve is going to curve towards. So you can see that no matter where I move my mouse, it is going to curve towards that handle. Right? So depending on the length of the handle and the direction of the handle, the curves are going to look different. I'm still in this same line that I started, 7 or 8 points ago. So I can click again, and it's made another curve, and now I'm back to normal. But let's say I want to change the direction of the curve so that I get kind of like a pointed, like two curves coming together to a point, right? If I can't really do that right now because of where the handles are. So what I have to do is actually change this handle right here because that's where the curve is curving towards. To do so, we have to hold down the Alt key. ALT is to the left of it should be to the left of your space bar. I'm going to hold that down, and my cursor is going to change. Holding that down, I can click and drag the handle and change where it goes. So if I want my two curves to kind of come together to a point, I can change where my handle goes, and then click, and then ta-da! Now I have changed the direction of this curve, which is very, very useful. So if you need to change the direction of the curve as you're using the line tool, you need to hold down the Alt key and change where the handle is. All right. So that's some basics with using the pen tool to make a path. All right, the next thing we need to talk about is an object. Now, what is an object in Illustrator? An object, or a shape, is an enclosed set of lines connected by those same anchor points that we were using for paths that has a fill color, and it can have a stroke or an outline, right? So let's use that same tool, that same pen tool. I'm going to zoom in over here under object. I'm going to use my pen tool again. And let's click with these anchor points. But instead of just leaving it an open set of lines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back towards where I started. So if I make an enclosed set of lines, that means nothing can get in or out. It's a closed shape. If I go back to that first point that I started with, you're going to see that right below my cursor, we're going to get a little circle. That means we're making an enclosed shape. Boom. So now this is an independent shape. It's an independent object. And now it has different properties. So when our pen tool is used to make lines, we have something called a stroke. And a stroke, you can see, is the amount of the width of the line that is coming off of that path. And we can change that stroke in a couple of ways. If we go over here to where we have this kind of square with the line through it and this other square that's kind of looks like an enclosed line, if we click on that guy, this is the stroke color. So if we click it twice, it brings up this color picker, and we can actually change the color of the stroke. So let's click it twice again. Maybe we want it to be yellow, and then we'll change it to that. Or no, you know what? I changed my mind. I actually want it to be blue. And so now I want it, let's change that blue a little bit. Okay. And so now we have the freedom to choose the color of the stroke. We can also change the thickness of the stroke. So if the stroke is selected, we can go up to the very top, and it says stroke right here, and it has a number value right here. It says stroke weight. We can increase that weight, which increases the size of the stroke coming off of that path. You can also make it smaller. It can become a fraction. It can be 0.25 of a point. Or it can be much thicker. It can be something like 11 or 15 points. It can be a very, very thick stroke, right? But now that we have enclosed this shape and it's become an object, we can give it a different property. So let's select that path again. This second option over here by our stroke color picker is this little square with the line through it. This is called the fill color. Let's change it from none down here below the color picker to color. And now, bada bing, bada boom, it has a fill color. So if we click that twice, we can change the fill color to something else if we so want. We can change that to whatever color we want it to be. All right, so that's how you make an object, and that's how you fill in its color. There's one other way I'm going to show you how to make an object, and it's actually 2 tools down from the pen tool. This is called the rectangle tool. So if you click on it, you can click and drag and create a rectangle. Just by clicking and dragging. If we hold down that rectangle, you can find a whole other different amount of shapes. So we have a rounded rectangle. We have an ellipse. Cool. We have a polygon tool. And if we click with the polygon tool, we can decide how many sides it has. So let's make a 8-sided polygon. Boom. Let's make let's click it again, a 22-sided polygon. It's almost a circle, but not quite, right? And with any of these shapes, if we hold down Shift as we create it, it will make the perfect version of that shape. So if it was a rectangle, it'll make a square. We hold down the ellipse, it'll make a perfect circle. And that's also very helpful when we're trying to make something look nice and perfect. All right. And then one last thing with our shapes here. If we select one of our shapes, one of our objects, you can see that, let's zoom in a little bit. Inside the anchor point, there's this little blue and white circle. What this allows us to do is adjust the anchor points. Oops, let's go back. Adjust the anchor points in regards to their roundness. So if we use the white selection tool and we click and drag inwards on that circle, we can round the edges of that shape depending how much we want it to be rounded, right? So we can have just a subtle little round at the edge, or we can round it to where it's almost a circle. Or really, we could round it all the way to a circle if we so wish. Right. Okay, so that is the difference between paths and objects. So before we talk about how we actually make images on here, we should talk about how we manage them and move them around. So we have two main tools to use that. We have these two arrow selection tools at the top. So we have a direct selection tool, and we have the normal selection tool, or just the selection tool. So the normal selection tool, the main way to kind of show the difference between these two is the selection tool, the normal one, the black one. You just click on an object and you can use it to move around. And this is mainly used for moving around whole objects. Selecting an object or a path, it's pretty simple. You can either click directly on the object or the path and move it around that way, or you can click and drag a little square over whatever you're trying to select, and you can select the thing that way, right? You can also select multiple things this way. If I click and drag a square over both of these things, I can select them at the same time and move them around. I can do that for all three and move them around. And there's another way we can select multiple ones. We can click one, hold down Shift, and click another one. And then that's a quick way to select more than one thing at once. The direct selection tool, that white arrow right there, this is very helpful for selecting anchor points. Anchor points, again, are these corners to an object or ends of a path. So if I want to click this anchor point and move it, I can do so with the white direct selection tool. So if I want to change the angle or the length of this path, I can do so with that white direct selection tool. I can do the same thing with a corner of an object. I can select it and I can move it around, and I can change the size and the shape of an object, like so. Let's try that with this circle here. I can use this direct selection tool to change the size and shape. We can also, if you're using a curve, click an anchor point, and we can use that direct selection tool to change the handles. We can change the size of the curve, the direction of the curve. We can change how dramatic it is. We can change if it goes this way or that way. So the direct selection tool is very powerful for editing a shape or a design after we've made it. All right, and the last thing that we need to learn how to do is how to save this project. That way we can work on it on another day. So to do that, to save a project, you are going to go up to File at the very top left of the window, and you're going to go down to Save, and you're going to choose a location for your project file. So for you, you would save it in Documents, and you would find your folder that says Project Files. And I would name this. So let's name it something we can remember. Maybe something like Practice Number One. I don't know. And hit Save. This right here, right below the name, is telling you the file type. It says .ai. .ai is short for Adobe Illustrator, and this is the file type that has all of our shapes saved into that file, and they allow us, or this type of file allows us to reopen the project and still edit all of those shapes and all of those lines. If we don't save it as a .ai file, we will not be able to continue editing our project. So it's very important to save your project as a .ai file every time you're done working on that project. All right, and one last thing before we finish. So we've made this beautiful first project, and it looks great. It looks awesome. I want to save this project as an image so I can post it all over the place. I can email it to anybody trying to buy my work. I can do whatever I want with it. But doing that as a .ai file might be kind of difficult because it's such a large file with so much information. So I want to save this as an image. All right, to do that, you're going to go to File up at the very top, and we're going to go down to Export, which is kind of in the lower middle here, instead of Save. I'm going to choose this first option here, Export for Screens. Click that, and I want to make sure a couple things are checked here. I want to make sure that I am just exporting the artboard, which is this white area here. If I let's add something here on the side here. Let's add like a little white square that we don't want to really. We're thinking about including, but we don't want to include in our final project, so we just left it off to the side. If I don't have all selected and I have full document selected instead, it's actually going to save everything that I've made, including this little white square off to the side, in my final image. So I don't want full document selected. I just want all selected, and that's only going to export this white document here, this artboard. So let's move this back over. Down here at the bottom, it's going to tell me a couple of things. It's going to tell me the scale of the final image. This is just going to be that same amount of like inches that we selected right at the very beginning. So it's going to be 8.5 by 11 inches. And then the format as well. So we can choose any type of image format. I'm just going to stick with PNG. Normally we don't have to change anything in here, but we do want to make sure that all is selected and not full document. It'll look kind of funky if the wrong thing is selected. So just make sure it says Artboard 1. And one more thing, we can also change the name. So if I double click on this artboard, let's call it Practice 1. Boom. And then hit Export Artboard. And then it will have saved that project in my files as a picture, which is what we wanted.